All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Cultivated Lettuce Cost webinar. Really excited to discuss the obvious increase in lettuce pricing that we've seen across the industry and really dive into how CEA can be a tool to ease those burdens and offer a collection of solutions for the lettuce industry in general. Joined by a great group of panelists, Ali Denali from Harvests, Josh Malik from Fork Farms, and Jay Kalu from Vertical Choice. I'm also joined by Rachel Warner. Rachel's with Cultivatd. She did a great write-up about lettuce costs and has done some research on the subject. So I'll start off by passing this over to Rachel to give us a quick rundown of what she learned through her research and her write-up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're really happy to have you all here and have a good chat about this. So my write-up really focused on what was happening in November, which basically in California, there was two big crop issues that we had. So we had a virus and fungus that spread throughout the Salinas Valley, which is where a large proportion of the lettuce produced in California for basically all of North America is grown between March and November. So with these massive crop losses, we obviously had reduced amount of lettuce available, and because of that, we ended up having inflated prices. So these issues have been seen in the valley since about 2015, and some of the things that could be exacerbating them are increased temperatures, which may be leading to higher incidence of the fungus, um, and also the virus, which is transmitted by thrips, which if as the temperature increases in the winter, we're getting less thrip die-off. So overall, we're having um, more generations of thrips throughout the year, and they transmit the virus to the crop. Another issue that is also facing lettuce production is where the winter production takes place. So that's in the Imperial Valley in California and Yuma Valley in Arizona. And the main issue for this is that all of the water comes from the Colorado River system, which is fed by Lake Mead. And as I am sure many of us here are aware, that the water levels in Lake Mead have been decreasing a lot. Um, and overall, we're going in with the 3 years of really intense drought that we've been having. I say we, but California and the southwestern United States has been having. Um, the water level is continuing to drop, and more restrictions are going to be placed on water use, and that also goes to the farmers in Arizona and California that produce lettuce from November to March in these valleys. So they're already having their water availability being cut back, and it's possible that we're going to see more and more cutbacks happening um, as the drought continues. They've had a good year so far. There's a big snowpack, so the reservoir may increase a little bit, but in the long run, one good year isn't going to solve the issue. So those are the main issues that we're facing. Drought, high temperatures are really the two big issues that the lettuce production industry in the southwestern United States is fighting. So with that, I will hand it back over to Kyle, and we can get some feedback from our panelists.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Rachel. That was a great stage floor for us to begin the conversation. First, I would love to give the opportunity to our panelists to talk a bit about their experience within the lettuce industry, within CEA, and tell us a bit about each of their companies so we understand their backgrounds. Ali, would love to start with you.
Thank you, Kyle. Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Daniali. I'm the founder and CEO of Harvest, and that's HRVSTS. We are a supply chain ERP solution and helping growers and buyers connect in CEA. We are a little bit different because we actually have switched the way food is ordered. We are demand-driven platform where buyers are able to pre-purchase CEA grown food for their specific needs, and we source everything from indoor growers. So when it comes to lettuce, our buyers are price locking what they need ahead of time with offtake agreements, and having growers grow exactly what they need to be delivered when they need it.
Beautiful. I appreciate that rundown, Ali. And it's a serious issue within the industry. Is something that I've seen a lot of hardship through, is just finding the proper distribution of your lettuce once it's grown, and setting up that full process can really be a challenge and often lead to bankruptcy when not done properly, since we're at the end of the day working with a perishable. Josh, would love to hear more about your background in Fork Farms.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me on the call. I am the Partnership Development Director at Fork Farms. Our focus is in engaging everyone with the process of growing fresh food. We take a unique approach to the hydroponics industry, with the focus being the engagement process. So we deploy hydroponic systems in K-12 environments, hunger relief, healthcare systems, etc. Any place people live, work, and play. And this particular issue that we're talking about today is incredibly relevant to what we do. The word distribution's been thrown around a lot already. And our focus is really putting the production capacity right where it's used and consumed. So whether that's in lunchroom cafeterias or directly in classrooms, our focus is in that deployment and in the engagement of the students with that technology.
Beautiful. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate that. And Jay, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and Vertical Choice?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So myself, I've had quite a few years experience in the produce industry. And from that, we've seen the challenges that Rachel was speaking about. And through that, we decided, there's better ways to grow. And through evolution out of produce, we got into the marijuana space. And then out of that, the equipment that we're using to propagate was something that was being tested to propagate some other plants. And from there, we gradually started getting into working with cubic farms. And through our process of working in this space, we realized that it isn't just one technology that is going to grow what we need here, whether it's in Canada or the US. We've got to farm with multiple technologies in order to provide what's required in the market. And so what we do is we partner up with farmers and growers to take their products to market. So currently we have programs with national distributors on the food service side and the retail side in Canada and the US. And in order to fill those supply chains, we kind of search out areas where we need product. We see who's currently growing, what they're growing, and if it's something that makes sense to fall under our brand, we'll take it to market. But yeah, so there's lots of opportunities to get fresh produce, whether it's lettuce, microgreens, herbs, in Canada and in the US locally within markets.
Beautiful. I appreciate that, Jay. And I want to start the bulk of our conversation with you. And generally, when you look at the overall CEA industry, especially focusing on the lettuce market, what sort of values does this industry provide to the collective lettuce marketplace that you especially see?
It's substantial. If we just back up a bit in regards to the price of the product coming in, right? In addition to the diseases and stuff like that, this has been something that's been on set for a while. Back in 2012, there was issues with labor down in California and in Arizona in the growing regions throughout the year. And this was because, those that were currently working in those fields were aging out. And the next generation, they're like, well, I'll go work at McDonald's instead of getting paid the same amount of money to work in a field, right? Makes sense. And so what some of the farmers down there were doing was they were, one of them, a very large one, they actually built a townhouse complex and offered free housing, brand new homes, townhomes for the workers, as long as they were signing up for a 1-year contract. And so these are the kind of things that added on to the cost of lettuce, right? So obviously those costs have to be passed on. And then recently the CFI had implemented another restriction on romaine and lettuces coming into Canada, which started about, I think, 2-3 years ago. From September 28th to about December 22nd, any lettuce that's been grown in counties such as Santa Cruz, San Benito, Monterey, and the Salinas Valley required to have an additional E. coli test performed before being shipped up north. However, the farms were required to package the product for export, then have the product tested. So a lot of the farmers said, you know what, why am I going to package my product under Canadian label guidelines for export? Because, hey, if it comes back positive for E. coli, now I got to destroy everything. And I spent my time on packaging, right? That's caused the pricing to go up considerably here. And that's why, you know, we used to see, you know, $90 to $100 case prices on romaine in December years back. But it wasn't until the past 2 years we started seeing the prices creep 120, 150. I know in Alberta they were going for $220 a case, right, for a 24 count of romaine. So in order to combat this, yes, we do need to get supply in Canada. And that's where, you know, what we currently are working on is working with different growers to come up with different varieties, because you got to remember what we grow, whether it's in the ground here in Canada or in a vertical farm, the romaine will never be the same as out of the US. We're never going to grow that center heart that we get out of the US romaine. Our ground is completely different up here. And even on the vertical side, we can't get that heart. We can't get that weight, right? And so those are some of the challenges where it comes to educating the distributors on the retail side, the food service side, as to what it is that we can actually grow and what kind of price points we can get to the market with. You know, we can't compete against local field grown product in the summer. And that's not something we're looking to do, because our product that, you know, we grow in vertical farms is going to be a lot cleaner, right? And, you know, to expand on that, another part of it is the organic aspect of it. In order to be certified organic, because a lot of retailers are looking for organic lettuce, is you have to grow in dirt, right, to be certified organic. And a lot of the vertical farming uses different compostable materials other than dirt. So it's actually a cleaner product, but it's something that the industry has to push as a whole, right?
Yeah. And so much of this is about educating the audience at the end of the day, where maybe they say, oh, I want to eat organic produce because it's safer and healthier. And those same values we provide as an industry within CEA. Maybe we can't get the organic certified label, but we still offer the value for the consumer. So a good portion is about educating the buyer to understand that you're still getting these same things with CEA produce. And you bring up a lot of good points about, you know, the testing and the housing and these different things that to some degree, it sounds like CEA could potentially solve portions of that. So I really appreciate that rundown. Same question for you, Jay. When you look at the industry, what value do you see CEA providing? And feel free, as Jay did, to go in a bit into, you know, some of the market trends and what you're seeing with pricing and your perspective on why those increases are occurring.
Was that to myself again?
I'm sorry, that was to Josh. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say,
if I said Jay, I meant to say Josh. My apologies.
Yeah, no worries. You can call me whatever you want, as long as it's but I think, you know, a few of the things we're seeing in the marketplace, I had a actually had a direct response to Rachel's research. We had a situation recently where we had a meeting with a deputy director of food service for LA Unified School District, not just talking about the price of produce, but the availability to have it at all. So romaine lettuce was actually removed from the lunch line for a period of time for the exact reason Rachel described. The other thing that we learned from that partner is when they source basil, they're buying two bunches of basil for $1.75. It costs them $1.75 in distribution costs as well. So 50% of their total spend is the distribution just to get the product in the door. And I think that's one of the spaces that we can really support in, and the feedback we're getting from our partners is to grow locally at the point of use to reduce that barrier from the distribution standpoint. As we do see rising fuel costs and other like market factors that are driving the price point up of this produce, it's always beneficial to grow locally and obviously reduce the waste of produce through the distribution channels. So that's certainly one thing we're facing. A few of the long-term indicators that we track is the aging workforce in the farming industry. Here in the United States, we're seeing that the average age of an American farmer is dramatically increasing. So we're trying to engage young people in the process of growing their own fresh food and starting to build the talent pipeline for the future farmers all across the world. And we're doing that with these localized installations in their schools, in their community centers, et cetera.
And Josh, you being let's say especially the technology provider on this webinar, when I've spoken to Alex, your CEO, and yourself in the past, you've seemingly had some cases where, maybe it's a school that's having a Fork Farms unit and they're now dealing with incredibly expensive lettuce in comparison. Do you find that the economics, like from an economic standpoint for smaller institutions to have and grow with a smaller unit, like a Fork Farms unit, do you find that looks really good from a bottom line, that it actually does help them and have a really good ROI in your experience?
Absolutely. And that's my follow-up to the prompt, is that the unit economics are critical. So we tend to grow a pound of produce for about $1, which makes it very competitive, with the marketplace. The ability to grow about 25 pounds of fresh food in 9 square feet, the relatively low footprint impact associated with vertical farming, can really help to alleviate some of those issues. And then the modularity, the ability to scale up a vertical growing system to meet the demands of the market and be flexible to the market, whether it be from the crop variety selection or from the total yield capacity of that installation, it's critical. So we're certainly getting that feedback from our partners and doubling down on that as an area we can help.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you, Josh. Ali, same question for you. What do you see as the solutions for CEA within lettuce pricing and the lettuce industry in general?
Well, I can definitely appreciate what Jay and Josh have brought already. The way that we are re-engineering this whole process is to bring in choice to those who actually are needing the food by giving them the ability to plan ahead and order what they need and then actually have it grown exactly for them. So we're using shipping container farming as a source for that. So what we've done is build a model where our growers are right next to where the consumption is happening. And we work with food service directly and provide variety to the chefs that are within food service. So the growers are able to make better margins because of less of a transportation cost that is cutting into them. We're using CEA to optimize and grow food without in larger scale, so that inputs are having a less of an impact on their bottom line. And the pricing is set between Our platform allows the buyer and the grower to set their price so that essentially they have this fair trade type of pricing between them. The grower gets to pick a price that makes sense to them and available to their based on their available capacity. And then the buyers can actually have a better sense of understanding their long-term expenses because they are booking capacity for growing for many different harvests ahead of time. So we're finding this. What's happening is an equilibrium happening within our platform, especially for lettuce, but mostly to bringing in choice. So buyers are actually able to pick different kinds of varieties that they didn't necessarily have access to from even large scale CEAs, where they were kind of pigeonholed to certain kinds of mixes or certain kinds of varieties. Now they're able to select from a larger set of custom types of leafy greens and herbs to be grown for them and delivered directly to them after harvest at a much more consistent price point.
Mm-hmm. And, a couple of things I'd like to unpack here is you had mentioned like the pricing being set with this relationship, let's say, between the chef, the end user, and the producer. And I think there's a lot of power in that because at the end of the day, with a lot of CEA, this is about unit economics. This is about the bottom line with what you're producing, still being able to make you money based on maybe more extensive capital costs. So being able to set the price makes it so you can make a much more appealing ROI, in my opinion, because you say, hey, I really need to, this is the price it needs to be, and I'm dictating this directly with that relationship. So I like it. I think it's a good approach to go direct to chefs if you can get the volume and the audience. And the other side, being a chef in the early part of my career, that's what excites me about this space personally, is the flexibility, the customization of the flavors, the different cultivars that you can produce. So it really is a chef's dream to be able to work directly with a producer and say, I really love lemon balm basil, or I have this specific cultivar that my grandmother used to grow. Can you do it in CEA? And build that relationship. And then they're going to be that much more willing to pay a premium price for that product. So really good points there. I want to stick on you, Ali, as we look into some of the key reasons, and we've talked a bit about it, that you see from your perspective that this pricing has increased for lettuce. And I know Jay went into a few of those variables. What do you see as being some of the largest motivating factors that have caused the lettuce pricing to more or less skyrocket in the last 6 months?
Well, I understand the challenges of field-grown lettuce. We're seeing that the lettuce pricing being fairly stable because our buyers have locked it in for several harvests. So they're riding this for what they have selected to be grown. They're paying at a lesser amount than actually the outside market is, and they're having choice, and they're getting it freshly delivered to them. So because of CEA, we're focused in the Pacific Northwest. Our energy costs are fairly stable. We're all hydropower. Our inputs we're buying in bulk, and our labor is fairly stable. So our growers are getting a higher margin, but having to deliver, they're also delivering food that is at the quality that buyers are wanting, that they're having a shortage in other places. So planning here is key. Being able to, we have buyers that plan 3 months ahead. They buy because they're catering. They know ahead what menu items they want, so they are able to plan ahead. So when you can have, and I think this is going to happen more and more for buyers to become smarter in locking in food prices early on by doing some planning when there is software available that allows this to happen. I don't think we've had this really before in agriculture, where you can understand the capacity and book it, similar to an Airbnb, and book that capacity to grow what you need. Mm-hmm. Now, our platform is allowing that because we're fractionalizing and aggregating capacity, indoor growing capacity for a specific buyer. And when they prepay it, they have it to be able to grow what they need. So, and we provide consistency of seed. We actually will drop ship the seed that was ordered. We'll do the third-party logistics after it's been harvested. So we provide this consistency in price where there is in other kinds of industries large spikes that impact what buyers are paying for.
Yeah, and you used a word I really like in there, and that's stability. And that's something that, let's say, CEA in general can really offer the marketplace, is the C in controlled environment agriculture, control. And if we can really maintain control, you can have stability in the marketplace. So a lot of the issues that we've already gone into aren't necessarily the issues that you need to deal with. Not to say that there aren't going to be variables, and I believe in Murphy's Law when it comes to working in any CEA operation, but nonetheless, there is a level of stability, and that does offer a good amount of solution.
When we built this platform, we took an engineering perspective of it, to be able to control as many of those and optimize as many of those variables as possible. And when matching happens, it's only matching 10 to 15 miles away from where the buyer and the grower are. So we're even reducing how much food is transported. In our Pacific Northwest area, we're essentially eliminating as much of the transportation costs as possible.
Makes sense. Josh, I have the same question for you. What are some of the key reasons that you feel the lettuce industry has seen these increases? We've talked about viruses, temperature, drought. Do you have anything additionally that you could expand upon that you see has caused increases in prices, and any additional solutions you can provide as the collective CEA industry is appreciated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I have some unique insight for my specific market where I live. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The vast majority of our produce does come from Salinas Valley in Yuma, Arizona, which is about 1,500 miles away. So I hate to hammer the distribution side of this, but with rising fuel costs, some of the political instability in Ukraine, and some other kind of global factors, it only makes sense that price points are rising. We've also seen just empty shelves at certain times of the year due to some of the issues that we've discussed up to this point. I think, a few of the other things that we're seeing is changing buying behavior of consumers as well. I think during COVID, we certainly saw an increase in the positive perception of eating healthy and fresh food. And certainly people are starting to consider eating more fresh food than potentially they had in the past. I am from the land of beer and cheese, so that's both a good thing, and culturally, I think it's due for Milwaukee. But those are a few of the things that I would emphasize.
I like it. And you mentioned a really important statement, as you said, during points of times, the grocery store shelves were empty. There wasn't anything to choose from. And I think when we talk about, because we're talking, of course, about lettuce costs and how we can collectively try to be a solution in that equation. But a big portion of what we're discussing as well is, hey, how is CEA just a solution to a bigger problem? And I think food security is the word that came to mind. Yeah. We talk about global food security, national food security, and local food security as well. So I think that having more local-based distribution via a network of CEA growers scattered across the nation makes it so when there's supply chain disruptions, when these issues come up, it's less likely to impact to the same degree the end consumer. So, I appreciate you bringing up the empty shelves, because that really, now we can drill in, hey, value being food security.
Yeah, certainly one thing we're seeing as well, and I always love to plug this partner. They're one of my favorites. It's Sherman Park Grocery Store here in Milwaukee. We find a lot of our grocery store partners are actually wanting to integrate CEA into their brick and mortar, to actually have it not only as a display and a brand representation to show how much they care about fresh food, but literally to use it as a utility within their space to control their own supply chains. Sherman Park Grocery does a fantastic job of growing local collard greens and mustard greens that then they stock the shelves themselves directly from their vertical farms. So just one thing we're seeing in the industry to help combat those empty shelves. But once again, just a small piece of the pie.
I love it. And it's, of course, combating those empty shelves. And it's a great marketing tool as well for these grocery stores. And to say, hey, we grew this right around the corner. I think it really it sets off passion and entices the buyer to say, like, that's really cool, and I want to learn more. So it's a really great seed that you're planting, no pun intended. Jay, I know you spoke a bit about some of the reasons you see this increase in cost happening in your first statement. Is there any additional points that you'd like to cover as far as why we're seeing increases across the board with lettuce costs?
Yeah, water quotas. So the farmers, especially in the Salinas Valley, they're given water quotas every year per acre, so they pay for it. It used to be, $500 per acre per month, and then back in 2021, it jumped up to $2,200 per acre. And I was actually sitting in Monterey with one of these larger growers. And he was telling me that he just got a letter in the mail that in September it was going up again. And so what was happening is, so some of the smaller farmers were like, hey, I can make this money without having to farm. So they were taking the money and selling the water rights to the larger growers. So that also cut back on the amount of supply of lettuce out there as well. And then, so now they're still at that price point. I think $2,800 to $3,300 per acre, right, for water. So it's that adds a lot to the cost, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we look at, and you're like, so we need to come up with ways to combat that, and that's growing locally.
Yeah, and I think just talking about the water consumption conversation, I think that this can often be thrown around heavily within our space of saying, oh, water conservation, and 99% compared to conventional. And I think be critical of those numbers. But with that said, CEA does seemingly reduce the quantity of water you need to produce lettuce, produce your crops, if done properly. I think there's a lot of variables at play, but let's say easily 60, 75% compared to conventional farming. So, on the local side and then on the production side as well, water conservation is a really big metric within CEA.
Yeah. And we've seen with some of the units or systems that we worked with, there's actually a 95% water saving as compared to field grown lettuce.
Yep.
So substantial. Yeah. And the purpose of CEA is to, sustainability, help the environment, all that kind of stuff. And these are things that we need to be doing in order to provide fresh produce and do the right thing for the environment at the same time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have one final question, and then we'll start to lean on the audience for some Q&A, and Rachel will take over that segment. It's a big question, and I'm going to start with you, Jay. What are some of your predictions for lettuce costs and challenges in the future? And how, at the end of the day, how can CEA be a potential tool in the toolbox to alleviate some of these predictions and potential future pain points?
I think the next year to 2 years, we'll probably see the same patterns we've currently been seeing. But given that the larger U.S. growers now in the Salinas Valley, which provides about 70, it's called the salad bowl in North America, provides about 70% of the salad across the U.S. and into Canada. So those larger growers now have started about a year ago looking at and investing in CEA because they realize that, hey, you know what, we have issues with drought. Currently, they had those atmospheric rivers that took a beating in California as well, which is going to affect the crops coming this spring. In that once they transition back out of Yuma and out of Nogales and out of the Imperial Valley, back up into the Salinas Valley, we're going to see reduced production, right? So we're going to see those high prices for a couple more years until the systems that these guys are building out or investing in come online and they're able to produce more product in a more effective way.
Yeah. It's a great point. I mean, it's really going to, just we have to look at the tools and how we'll be able to facilitate those type of issues as we look forward. Josh, same question for you. What sort of predictions do you have for lettuce costs and challenges?
Yeah, I think from an average price point perspective, we may still, we're not at the end of the curve yet, but I think likely what we're going to continue to see is increased volatility in the price point of specific crops, right? I think until there's some reallocation of resources and maybe more of a hub and spoke model. I'm a big advocate for growing here in the Midwest because we have all the water. There is some, reality to that of reallocating some of our water resources. The other thing, certainly from the CEA perspective, is reducing our electrical costs associated with growing fresh food. I believe the industry average is around 18 kilowatt hours to grow a pound of lettuce. With some innovations we've made with our technology and some increased innovation on the LED components of our systems, we're able to get that down to about 4.6 kilowatt hours per pound, which I think is we're able to hone in and refine and innovate on some of those nuances in the growing system. Our costs dramatically get reduced. Obviously, labor is always going to play a role as well. So as increased automation becomes available and new distribution systems, that's all going to help alleviate with some of these cost concerns.
Yeah, and I like that you use the word innovation, and I'll probably throw in another question after we run through everyone's predictions about innovation and how we can look at that innovation as a solution. But to pass it over to Ali, what are some of your predictions for lettuce costs and challenges in the future?
Well, I really like what Josh mentioned. I think the salad bowl of the U.S. is going to change. I think we are going to see a shift of where the production of lettuce is going to move to, where what Josh mentioned, where energy costs are lower and CEA is more established, and it's going to really shift. If the current growers cannot move to CEA fast enough, I think there is a time limit here where consumers are going to be patient enough for a certain amount of time. Their pocketbooks are going to be flexible enough to allow it, and then the unit economics are going to shift where you're going to have production in places where you wouldn't even think that it's could have done it, and it's going to displace those growers that are impacted today in a way that we can't even anticipate. I think also price is going to get to a point where CEA is going to, the question of is it CEA, and the premium of CEA is going to just vaporize. It's going to be availability. Is it available? And when it's available, people aren't going to care where it's going to come from, because it's going to be the same, it's going to address their needs. And then where that's going to lead us is choice, where how is a chef going to look at availability and choice and be able to use some sort of other kind of leafy green to be able to bring a better profile, a better taste to what they're substituting with, so that our palates then are going to change. And, lettuce doesn't become this right now, this filler and everything. Maybe it's becomes spinach, or maybe it becomes kale, maybe it becomes something else that's a lot more available, and it's grown easier and at a better price point. I think what Jay and Josh have mentioned, pricing is going to continue for the next couple of years. That is going to be that spikes and ups and downs, but we're going to have to either grow everything leafy greens inside of CEA to be able to really take care of the impact, the climate crisis that we're dealing with, and it'll move to being into facilities that are a lot more efficient with water, with energy, with labor, automation, and to be able to maintain the number of people and the mouths that we want to feed. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's a limited resource, and we got to figure this out, and we're going to be forced into making some of these choices that are impacted by our palate.
So do you feel that there will be almost this migration from how we're doing it in Salinas Valley, and that will be more controlled environment ag based in the future?
I think within 3 years, everything that can be grown indoors will be grown indoors.
Yeah, and I guess that leads me, and I'll start with you, to the next question. We talked about the problem, and that's how you see the future panning out. What sort of innovation would need to happen within CEA from your perspective for us to best assist this lettuce market, and as you said, potentially be taking a big bulk of the responsibility when it comes to production?
I think automation is going to be the key here. I mean, I have been in the farm growing in shipping container farms, and it is hard work. It is. If you don't have automation, you're spending your wheels and a lot of your time. So you either doing yourself, or you're hiring somebody to do it, and we need to be able to innovate in automation. There's some really amazing work that's happening in the industry, and we need to stop chasing grocery. We need to start also looking at food service more, to be able to as another avenue for distribution in this industry, to be able to help solve some of the growing pains. And sharing of information about recipes and how things are grown across, so that you can have the best of technology across. And we're not spinning our wheels. I see a lot of people reinventing the wheel every single time. Every single facility that's being put up, they're spending millions and millions of dollars to figure out the same thing, when we could have been sharing information and gotten a lot further faster. So I think it's automation, it's sharing of information, and then also working on technology that is about connecting people with their food.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy you bring that up. I mean, the two pillars right there, automation being a huge vessel for the industry. If we're going to be competing with a tractor and an incredible labor force and a very established industry, automation, and I hate to say competing, I do, but I'm going to leave it there. So automation is, I think, great, and transparency. I mean, absolutely, that I think a lot of people within this industry have seen the silos and how that can repress information. And the more transparent, the more honest conversations we can collectively have, the more we can find collective solutions. Josh, same question for you. Innovation, where do you see innovation needing to happen for us to move this industry forward?
Yeah, Kyle, I really appreciate the question, and I'm glad you threw this one to me. We are obviously a technology company, so continuing to invest in what we know works well. The verticality of systems and the efficiency of space utilization is key. Here in the United States, we do have a surplus of commercial real estate. This may not be relevant to your listeners, but places like Shopko's, Kmart's, existing commercial real estate that could easily be converted into new growing facilities. So we need some great minds, and not only on the growing side, but on the real estate management side as well, in order to expand the footprint of CEA. I loved Ali's comments regarding the expansion of CEA in the next 3 years. I do think that traditional agriculture will always play a role in what we do as a species. I think I'm an outdoor gardener, so I do see a lot of value in traditional. I don't think we've mastered the potato, root vegetables. There's a lot yet to be grown outdoors. I think really where our emphasis should be are on the most highly perishable, the most difficult to transport, and the most nutritious food for the people in our communities. The other component of this that I love that's come up in the conversation a few times is flexibility. I do think, I think it was Ali who commented on this, of providing the growing capacity, but the versatility to place your order ahead of time, especially in places like food service. I did mention some of our contacts giving us feedback about the price per pound they're paying, and it has fluctuated dramatically. For larger customer bases, whether it be food service, the restaurant industry, et cetera, there are some efficiencies I think we can build that may be more difficult in the grocery space. So I love that comment. I do think there's a lot more exploration to be there. And then finally, for us from the innovation front, everything comes down to inputs and outputs, right? How do we increase the efficiency of our systems, increase the yield per square foot, and ultimately reduce that kilowatt hour cost, reduce our electrical cost and water consumption? We're already at a 98% reduction in total water consumption per square foot versus traditional agriculture, but there's always more we can do and refine our designs. So I think the future is bright for our industry, and I'm really grateful to be on with these amazing CEOs. I think collaboration is something that's somewhat unique in our industry too. There are elements of what we do that are still in its infancy, and I think the more we can work together and find our own niches, right, I think it's better for all.
Beautiful rundown, Josh. Thank you. Jay, why don't you close us off, and then we can open the floor, and I'll hand it over to Rachel for Q&A. Innovation, what do you think needs to happen as far as innovation within CEA for us to better serve the lettuce industry in the future?
Yeah, loaded question. There's a lot. We currently look at where we're at and what we're providing based on the current equipment that we have. We're able to grow specific things well and other things not so well, right? So innovation on the side of technologies to grow different lettuces, whether they're head lettuce or broadband lettuces, is something that we need to work at, especially when differentiating between food service and retail, because they both had different demands on the type of lettuce heads and lettuce sizing that they're requesting. And then there's certain technologies that, are better suited for a food service size head. There's other technologies better suited for a retail size head. And then definitely, as Ali and Josh both mentioned, is working together. It's something, if we have a recipe for something to grow something very well, it needs to be shared with other growers so that they're not spinning their wheels and wasting their time, right? With deciding on the seed variety, nutrition, the light, the water, like all that kind of stuff, right? Which is something we've already implemented with some of the farms that we work with. Is we'll have different ones experiment on different seed varieties, and then once we've nailed it down, then we'll provide that recipe to the other farmers as well that are going to be providing us that product for the market, right? So it's not just innovation technology side, but innovation on the growing side as well, right? I think we need to move forward on both.
Absolutely. Great rundown. All right, Rachel, why don't I'm going to pass it on over to you, and you can ask the panelists some of the questions that came through.
Perfect. Yeah, so we have a few different questions. I think I'll start with the comment, I think it was that George had, about seeing a difference between lettuce production and tomato production in CEA. And I wanted to add, there's the comment that some people think that CEA can't really be, or more specifically, vertical farming can't be successful because it only grows leafy greens. And a lot of people don't see how that could actually become a profitable business in terms of being like a high tech industry. So maybe we'll throw that over to Jay to start with. If you have any comments on that, of just how different crops have performed and how, like, what we can see from that.
Yeah. Well, I think any crop where it doesn't have to be a large vine or a root veg. Currently, we've got technologies that will grow that product. We've experimented with cherry tomatoes, with strawberries, so items that you can grow in greenhouses, you can grow to a certain extent in using current technologies that are out there. But when you get into, trying to do a hothouse large tomato, like a beefsteak or a vine ripened or aroma, those can be a little more difficult because of the vines. It's something that current CEA systems aren't set to handle. Right? But I'm pretty sure someone will come up with one soon enough. Right?
Yeah, that's true. With the innovation and working together, I wouldn't be surprised. Thank you. So I will ask Ali this question. Do you want to comment on the cost of substrate and I guess the cost of inputs, and also the question added how to manage emissions reporting if you're using a substrate that is very like energy intensive, or like peat, or also in terms of emissions, specifically scope 2 and 3, if you have any comments on those two aspects of the question.
I don't have much comment on the emission side. Yeah, that's for us. We don't really track or report on that, but it is a good question and something to double click on in the future for sure. In terms of the inputs, what we're discovering is that that scale is really the key to making a grower profitable. And let me expand on that. We are building a decentralized network of growers through our platform, and in areas where we can bring together a lot of growers, independent growers, CEA growers, and share in costs of input, the unit economics then become tremendously more profitable. Where an independent grower may have to buy a 5-gallon, of xeritol, we can buy a 55-gallon drum of xeritol and share the costs across many different farmers and bring in a better price operationally per day for that farm. By bringing growers into like the Pacific Northwest, where we have 6.9 cents of commercial power per kilowatt hour that's hydro generated and is more sustainable, it makes, again, input much better, and you get better margins when you have the opportunity to have multiple farms in an area, but have labor, that one person that can manage 3 farms. That again is something that makes the cost to own and operate much better. And I bring back the ability to aggregate the capacity of growing is unique for our platform, that allows a buyer to be able to use this type of system for food service scale, and then the scale itself then translates to better pricing.
100%. Economies of scale really
Yes.
help here. And I think
software to do that.
Yeah, well, I really like your approach in the sense that you have smaller container farms, which are maybe a bit easier to manage, but you're still working with the scale, which I think is, like, for me, out of what I know of what you guys are doing, is like kind of the most genius part of it. So
thank you.
So thank you. And I will throw a question to Josh. This is a personal question, actually. So you've put a lot of your units in different places, including like schools and public spaces. And have you found that by exposing people to this, that you're getting people who are interested in joining the industry? And do you think that's a way that we can kind of like keep an influx of people coming and get some skilled labor all over the place? Because I think it's definitely something we need. Despite adding a lot of automation, we're still going to need people involved.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, so much of what we do is oriented around engagement in the process of growing your own food, with this magical things we all know happens, which is when you grow your food, you're more likely to eat it, right? So when we operate flex farms, either in a K-12 environment or in hunger relief or in community centers, a major area of the focus is how do we get students to engage in that process of growing their own fresh food, which is going to lead to healthy outcomes, but also develop a potential pipeline of talent for future indoor agriculture professionals. I will say our focus as an organization, when you look at the industry, it tends to be end heavy, right? Whether it's tabletop home use hydroponics or it's large scale, capitally intensive, large production facilities. There aren't a lot of players in this middle space, which is really where we operate, where we can grow about 25 pounds of produce in 9 square feet and then increase that at a modular scale. So what we find is a lot of people who want to break into the indoor agriculture industry will start running a pilot program with our technology and then either consider a container farm or something else down the line, or just get multiple flex farms and scale their business that way. So I think we fill a very unique niche within the industry. One of the questions I saw was talking about CapEx requirements for construction. That's a major hurdle for anybody who wants to enter this marketplace. So if for $5,000 we can get exposure to the capabilities of controlled environmental agriculture, the number of farmers, the number of small businesses that want to do this work, that decentralization model I mentioned before, it just becomes exponential. So that's the role I think we play, and I think we do it quite well.
Yes, fantastic. There are a few more questions, but we've reached the end of our time. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to address those. But Kyle can jump up to. So thank you, and I'll let Kyle kind of lead us out.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that, and just want to thank all of the panelists for their time today. Great job, great information. and really happy to be able to have the opportunity to host this on behalf of Cultivatd. So let's keep being as transparent as possible for the industry, and just working hard to make this more of a reality and check out from a truly business sustainability mindset lens.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
everyone.
Thank you.